part of the celebration of the 30th anniversary of the International Society for Quality of Life Studies, it is both a privilege and an honor to interview Professor Alex Michalos today. Professor Michalos is one of the pioneers in the quality of life research, well known for his multiple discrepancies theory, Professor Emeritus at the University of Northern British Columbia, founding director of the Institute for Social Research and Evaluation, senior research advisor to the Canadian Index of Wellbeing, former president of ISQOLS, former president of the Academy of Humanities and Social Sciences of the Royal Society of Canada, and founding member of the Canadian Commission, former member of the Canadian Commission for UNESCO. He's also co-founder of 7 peer-reviewed academic journals, including Social Indicators Research, Applied Research in Quality of Life, and the Journal of Happiness Studies. Thank you, Professor Michalos, for joining us today. I am Roger Fernandez-Urbano, a researcher in happiness, subjective well-being, and social inequalities. And I have had the privilege of collaborating with Professor Michalos on the Encyclopedia of Happiness, Quality of Life, and Subjective Well-being that I co-edited, where he contributed a very personal chapter reflecting on his own quality of life and research journey. Today, I will ask Professor Michalos 5 questions, and the first one, which will lead the floor to him, is about self-identity and aging. So the first question is, as we age, we often face the challenge of losing fundamental aspects of our identity and self-definition, as well as witnessing the passing of friends and loved ones. How do you think that we can navigate these experiences while maintaining a sense of well-being and purpose?
I think on approaching aging and death, I follow Cicero. In Cicero's paper on aging, he says, among other things, that life has different seasons, and if you sort of discover what the seasons are and what their contributions might be, what their liabilities might be for you in the season that you're in, then you can achieve happiness. I think that's true. I think that apart from death, the business of identity is one of the problems I've had in my life is I have a hard time giving up the old Alex, the Alex of 15 or the Alex of 25. That's one thing. And then I also have trouble identifying the new Alex. I have trouble determining what is me when I'm healthy or sick versus what is me as 80 years old or going on 90 years old next year. And there's no rule book about that. You have to sort of live your life and feel your way and adjust that nice concept you have as this young man so that it get a realistic concept for this old man. That helps. But having said that, it's not the case that at all the seasons you have the same distribution of good things and bad things. I don't know if there are more good things at my age than there were when I was in my 20s or 30s or 40s. But I do know that there are definite advantages at my age, things that I can do that I couldn't have done earlier. And I try to focus on those, and that makes life easier now. Regarding death, I first encountered that when I was 9 years old and had to go to my grandfather's funeral. And the tradition in my mother's family was everybody kisses the dead man. Well, that was a bit traumatic. Anyway, I came out of there and I remember crying and telling her that I didn't want to die. And she said, "You're too young, don't worry about it." My mother was straightforward in that way. Anyway, she was right. And I didn't worry about it uh, most of my life. And it sort of surprised me when I got into my 80s. I wasn't sure where all the years went. It was like I just flew by them, and there I was, older. And I could look at my record and know in different years I did this, that, and the other thing. So I knew it was true that I actually had gone through those years. Um, but it was a surprise to be at the other side of them, where I am now. Um, the Anyway, what I have thought since I've been an adult uh, is pretty obvious that everybody dies. I often have the feeling that life is like one of those bad blue B movies where everybody dies, the good guys and the bad guys. It doesn't really matter. Uh, and in that respect, life leaves a lot to be desired. But so that's a different kind of thing. And I don't know if when we ask people, are they satisfied or happy with their life as a whole, I don't know if they take into account their loved ones or not. And I don't know if anyone has studied. Well, I know we've all studied a lot of things that they do take into account. I'm not sure about that one yet. So I think that's on identity and death.
My next question will be, what inspired your journey into quality of life research, particularly your focus on ethics, well-being, and social indicators? I guess that maybe did your experiences as a political activist influence this path?
Uh, there are different contributions to this at the beginning, different beginnings, I guess. Uh, my degree was in philosophy of science. And the problem I worked on my dissertation was the problem of measuring the acceptability of scientific theories. There was a conflict between Rudolf Carnap, a positivist, and Karl Popper, and I supported Carnap. But uh, the problem that problem is formally, from a logical point of view, is formally identical to the problem that utilitarian philosophers have. It's easy to say we want to obtain the greatest good for the greatest number, or the greatest happiness for the greatest number. But when you set out to do that, there's a broader range of items that make a contribution. And somehow you have to array all the items and weight them somehow and track them over time. So you have to operationalize your measures about how to measure each of the items, and then you have to figure out an aggregation function somehow. And so, because I am an act utilitarian, I always took seriously the idea when people said you should maximize the good. Okay, I have to do that. Well, as I worked in the literature on decision theory and voting theory and the problem of developing some kind of a measure of acceptability for scientific theories, I ran into the problem that some people think that morality is separate from all the other good things in life, and that in principle you can't really throw in morality or moral issues as another item in this array of things to consider. Well, I didn't think that, I don't think that's very helpful. In my first book, the first couple of books I wrote were on logic. They were textbooks on logic. But the main first book I wrote was on foundations of decision making. And in that book, I tried to show how a notion of rationality could be defined in terms of morality and other things. I call the notion consensual rationality. People, economists especially, had routinely distinguished equality and equality and efficiency. Sorry, ethic, what's the word? Equity and efficiency.
Equity.
Yeah, which is really efficiency with morality somewhat.
Morality.
And
Yes.
what I try to do is show that that's a big mistake. That if you use a generous definition of efficiency, you roll equity into it, and then you get a proper measure of what's good and what's not good. I call that consensual rationality when you meet that standard. Well, not many people believe that the book didn't go anywhere, and I didn't do anything more with it, but I tried on that one. Anyway, after I got into that, I was reading in the literature of public choice, and they were dealing with the problem of making this big aggregate, this composite measure of all the good things to decide if your society was getting better or worse. And I was a charter member of the Public Choice Society, and one of the people I met was Manker Olson. Manker Olson was working for the U.S. Department of Health and Welfare at the time, and he wrote the first social report for the United States. It was a short book, and I got to know him through the Society for Public Choice. And so I was reading that kind of material. And Manker was one of the pioneers in social indicators research and measuring the quality of life. And when I met with Manker and started that literature, I felt like I had come home. There was finally a community a research community that was focused precisely on measuring the quality of life, which allowed me to use my inclination to quantify whatever I can, and also to use my inclination to do what's morally good. I don't know why I have that inclination. I can blame my mother and father, I suppose, for that inclination. But my brother didn't seem to be bothered by that. And we had so I don't know exactly where that came from. But when it got to me, I knew it was in the right place. And so that's what I've been doing for the last 50 years.
Wow. Yeah, what advice, Professor Michalos, do you have for the next generation of researchers and policymakers in advancing well-being and quality of life studies?
Yeah. I have trouble with the next generation because I have the feeling that, like the old generals, they're always preparing for the last war. That people like me, when you ask them what to do next, the answer will be something about how it would have been good a few years ago. But I'll take it on anyway. Ken Land and I wrote published a paper 4 years ago called 50 Years of the Social Indicators Movement.
Mm-hmm.
And we had our friends write responses to commentaries on what we wrote. And then I and Ken wrote comments on the commentaries. When I got to the end of that, I was mainly the author of that part. Ken was mainly the author of the first part. Anyway, um, near the end of that paper on our comments, on the people's comments, we had a list of 28 things to do for the next generation of social indicators researchers. I can't give you the list of 20. I sent them to you, but I can't do it here. But I briefly, what I think is um, first we have to take seriously sustainable development, and that I think I was a member of the Canadian Commission for UNESCO, uh, and I was on the monitoring and evaluation group for UNESCO Paris of the decade of education for sustainable development. So I really got into the business of sustainable development, um, and and that includes uh, taking environmentalism seriously. A lot of people in the world connected to UNESCO think of sustainable development as just environmentally uh, significant development. But it's bigger than that because it's social and political and economic and a bunch of things. But the environment is certainly there. And there are people in high places who still don't recognize that the environment as a problem.
What do you consider your most significant contribution to quality of life research, and how do you hope your work will be remembered?
Hmm. Uh, a few things. First, I guess I like my theory called multiple discrepancies theory. Not everybody does, but anyway, I think worthwhile contribution. Apart from that, I guess it's my editorial work. I think the encyclopedia. Um, I would Social Indicators Research was the first journal devoted to quality of life measurement. Uh, and then the second one was the Journal of Happiness Studies. And the third one was Applied Research on Quality of Life. And I think those were very important. And on the way, the most frequently cited Journal of Business Ethics, uh, I was the founder of that too. And the reason I founded that was because uh, for social indicators research, I was getting a lot of papers sent to me by authors who were interested in corporate social responsibility. And so they were publishing in social indicators research. And I thought, well, what we need is a journal of business ethics.
Separate one.
All those papers there. So I did that. And a few years after that, um, my present wife became editor with me, and that's been good. We also started, started a journal called Teaching Business Ethics, which lasted about 7 years, and then it didn't really fly, so we rolled Teaching Business Ethics into Journal of Business Ethics. And I also started with another bunch, the Asian Journal of Business Ethics. The hope there was, I mean, there are so many Asians. The hope there was that we could provoke more research there. And the problem we ran across was a lot of Asians were interested in business ethics, but they didn't want to publish in Asian Journal of Business Ethics. They wanted to publish in the main Journal of Business
The
Ethics.
main, yeah, typical. Yeah.
That journal still exists, but it never took off the way I thought it would. So there were 7 altogether. I don't know if I got all of them in there, but I think, although I would rather be remembered like Aristotle for having bright ideas, I think most of what I contributed was editing other people's ideas, which is okay. You gotta have that
It's
too.
great. It's great. So, as you know, ISQOLS is celebrating its 30th anniversary. So, the last question is, what should the society focus on in the coming decades to enhance its global impact?
Yeah. Yeah, I have the same problem with this one that I did with the earlier one, about old people telling young people what's good. Some in the Constitution of ISQOLS, all past presidents are members of the Board of Governors. Um, very few, very few of them, including myself, continue to participate. But speaking for myself, at some point several years ago, I thought, nah, this is not the right thing. I have to stop feeding these people my ideas. I mean, they're going to be living 20, 30, 40 years after me, and I have to stand aside and let them do it.
Wow.
I would urge the ISQOLS people to keep their ears to the ground and do what looks like it has to be done in the time that you're living.
Fantastic, Professor Michalos. It couldn't be a better ending. So, thank you very much for sharing
Thank you,
your thoughts and
Roger.
feelings with
Yeah,
us.
I appreciate it. When my father got naturalized, he was born in Chios, Greece. When he came to the United States, he tried calling himself Michalos, but people would see the name and they'd say Michaelis. And so after a while, to be 100% American after he got naturalized, they called me Michaelis. So I go with Michaelis, but
Michaelis, okay.
I stuck with Alexandros. I
It's
want to
Alexander the
make no
Great.
mistake about it.
I asked my Greek friend how to pronounce correctly your surname in Greek, and he said Michalos, Michalos.
Yes,
But of course, it's okay.
he's right. He's certainly right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Roger.